So, should the Federal Reserve know every little financial move that you do, right? And so what I really want to go into for this video is the concept of identity privacy, specifically for central bank digital currencies, and basically specifically identity privacy where the information is known to the central bank, right? Rather than, an intermediary, no one other, or other entities, right? Just to kind of give examples, right? So to kind of define identity privacy, according to a recent paper published by the Office of Science and Technology for the White House, identity privacy concerns the extent to which individuals can keep various attributes related to their identity confidential from different parties, such as the central bank and intermediaries, right? So in the case to where basically your identity related information, whatever that happens to be for a CBDC, right, is known by the central bank, what are some of, we'll say, pros and cons of that, right? And so one of the kind of pros in a way is the data is centralized, and so therefore it could be argued to be easier to implement extensive cybersecurity protection for that, right? Whether that be through legal protections, making it harder to get. Maybe they have, in order to see such data, you have to have judicial approval, or maybe even technological kind of obstacles in a way, where there are like encryption keys and that sort of thing, just to give some examples, right? And that's pretty much all I have in terms of the pros category. In terms of the cons, however, it was also stated in the very same paper that this in general may harm human rights and democratic values. Also, it would be a significant expansion in the Federal Reserve's powers, especially with their access to customer info, which raises privacy concerns. Obviously, that's kind of the whole major, we'll say, push against CBDCs, right? Or at least from what I've noticed, when people are against central bank digital currencies, this is one of the biggest reasons why, which is understandable, right? But to take a direct quote from the same paper from the Office of Science and Technology, and honestly, something I was quite surprised they even stated, but to directly quote, enabling this capacity, meaning for the central bank to know identity-related information of people, right, could allow a future administration to use the CBDC system to surveil the population in close detail, and cybersecurity problems could still occur, right? So just the fact that they brought up, hey, this is a slippery slope, more or less, right? And that it could allow a future administration to use the CBDC system for very, how should we say it? We'll just kind of leave it broad and say negative purposes as of right now, right? And we'll get more and more in depth into it in future videos, right? So other things to keep in mind for this type of use case, right, where we're really concerned with identity privacy known to the central bank specifically. So this places anti-money laundering and counter-financing terrorism compliance on the Federal Reserve, right? So who will supervise them to make sure they're complying to begin with, because normally it's the other way around, or you have other sort of boards and such, or government entities that supervise in the current kind of traditional financial system, intermediaries who take care of this stuff already for traditional banking and that sort of thing, right? So another point, consumer discomfort is prevalent, as I've kind of already stated, for the Fed collecting data in this respect, and this could also discourage adoption and nullify the financial inclusion that they're really trying to push for a CBDC in the first place, right? So again, another trade-off to having identity related information known to the central bank, right? And so also there could be some, or this in general, right, would be a significant departure from current models of the financial system, and may introduce unforeseen risks, right? To take again from the same paper published by the Office of Science and Technology, right? So one thing to keep in mind, and they kind of just raised the question, and I'll go a little bit more into it in its own video, more or less, is this whole concept of how exactly are we going to define identity related information. And they don't, right? It's kind of left very open, at least as of right now, from the papers that I've seen from them in general. Pretty much all I can say is stuff like payment addresses were brought up. Trying to remember off the top of my head what exactly they brought up with respect to this, because it was pretty quick, and they weren't really, they did not go in depth. It was more to just raise the question and say it's like, you know, it's for further discussion as you get with all this kind of bureaucratic publications, I guess, to where they always need more data and they always need to discuss it and that sort of thing. But it's still a very important, like, we're talking about identity related information, right? And the privacy of individuals, especially or specifically with respect to a central bank digital currency, right? To where all of your finances would more or less be known. So it's a very important question to know what exactly or what exact information is used to identify people, right? And there are other things that are talked about, like zero knowledge proofs and that sort of thing, but that's not necessarily, you know, in the forefront of their discussion, unfortunately. But just kind of putting that out there. And I guess as a final word with respect to this is, yes, we're talking about privacy protections, but if you notice, like, some of the pros that I gave earlier were legal and tech related, right? But it's also like, you know, just because they're called protections for a reason, it's not guaranteed, right? So the privacy itself is not guaranteed. There could be holes in the system, whatever they conjure up somehow, and that those will somehow be taken advantage of, hacked, whatever, right? Cybersecurity is a big concern with this sort of thing. And so trying to kind of keep that in mind. Yes, we're talking about privacy protections for people's identity, but it's more of how they're constructing the system itself, not necessarily, you know, I guess I should say this question and what we're talking about is separate from cybersecurity, right? To varying degrees, right? Depending on what you want to talk about. But anyways, we're going to leave this one here. So if you enjoy kind of these more like use case or kind of US CBDC design choice kind of videos, make sure to subscribe if you like them, and basically, you know, if you have any comments, concerns, whatever, put those in the comments below. That's one of the whole reasons for making these videos in general, is to provoke the discussion itself. So anyways, in the top right hand corner, I will put up the video for basically the same idea, but to where the identity privacy is known to intermediaries instead. And does this actually, you know, like vary at all from our current traditional kind of financial system in a way? But anyways, I hope to see you guys there.